There's one. Found a little activity over here and thought I'd throw a little swim bait at him. Get over here. Nice chunky spot. What's going on, everybody? It's Dalton. Out here this morning. Got my first one there on a little swim bait. This little missile swim bait right here. I got it on about a 16-ounce jig head, 10-pound test fluorocarbon, and rolling it along really slow. These bass are really active out here feeding on bait fish. I can see them jumping around, see them running around in the graph. Nice little swim bait to catch you some bass. Work it real slow and it works. Got him. I got him. I noticed they were slapping at that swim bait. I wasn't getting good hook sets on them. They were hitting the tail. So I threw a jig out there and wound up with a nice one. Thing about a jig is you can get some really good hook sets right on the roof of the mouth. This is a nice chunky spotted bass right here. Good tournament keeper, about 1.5 pounds, 1.75 pounds. I mean, a beautiful bass. And sometimes I'll use a jig just to kind of back up whatever I'm throwing. So I started with that swim bait and they were hitting it like crazy. About every cast I was getting taps on it, but they were just hitting the tails. So I thought, well, maybe I'm working a little too fast. So let me show you what I'm using here. Yesterday I bought some of these Bass Patrol jigs, little football head jig, brown and purple. And what I did was I picked up a bag of these little Strike King Rage Bugs. These are 3-inch, they're really small. But it makes for a very compact jig. I'm using 14-pound test Sunline Sniper on a 7-foot medium heavy and a 7.5-to-1 gear ratio reel, and just kind of scooting it along real slow. Caught that nice bass. So when I work a jig, I just throw it up there at the side. There's a lot of rocks out here. Good place for a football jig, and all I do is just scoot it along really slow. I don't work a jig fast. You got to kind of think about a crawdad, right? Crawdads move incredibly slow unless they're spooked. Right now I can feel little rocks that I'm hitting. That's perfect because that can create a reaction bite. I don't even mind if it gets a little bit hung up. It's just a very simple way to throw a jig, but one of the main food sources they have at this lake are small crawdads. So this little jig has a nice compact size to it. 3/8 ounce is really my favorite weight for a jig. I'll go heavier, but I like 3/8 ounce a lot. And I think this is a good backup for a swim bait out here. So I do see a lot of these bass are on the bottom. Then they'll come up and chase those bait up. And that's how I work a jig. Just kind of scoot it along real slow, pitch it over against those rocks. Works out good. Yeah, jig bites are a lot of fun, man. They just kind of thump it. And then I haven't been using the home run hook set, not trying to jerk it out of their mouth. All I'm doing is just kind of reel setting them. I've got a good sturdy rod here. I don't need to get crazy with my reel set or with my hook set. I can just reel set them and it works just fine. It's got a little mustad hook on there. That's one of the things that got my attention about this jig, this Bass Patrol jig, is they got that mustad hook. Nice little weed guard. Works out really good out in these rocks. I mean, anytime you see rocks, you know, throw a jig, because those crawdads get in those rocks and those little crevices. And I can feel this jig dragging through those rocks, and when they hit it aggressively. They really think it's a little crawdad. Works out good. They're really aggressive on this jig. Makes it a lot of fun. This one here kept going after it. I just felt him tapping on it, tried to reel set him, didn't get him. And then I started swimming it. I just went ahead and swim because these little legs right here, I'm gonna have to replace it. He tore the leg off. These little legs right here will swim, and he took it while I was swimming it, so that makes it a lot of fun right there. I always feel like it's best to have little baits for backups to other baits. Started that swim bait, started catching them but missing a lot of them because they weren't really hitting it very hard. Then I went to that jig and just slowly working that jig, and the jig caught them. And now I'm throwing out a Neko rig. This is a Fluke, or this is a Zoom Fluke stick. I put a little rubber O-ring on it, 16th ounce little tungsten weight, nail weight that I've got super glued in there. And all I'm going to do is just move this along the bottom and might get some bites. We'll see. That was the first cast with that little Neko, and got me one there not far from the boat. Sometimes I'll follow them and then they'll hit it. Kind of show you how I rig this thing. Again, I put that little rubber O-ring on there. I like the idea of using this Fluke stick. You know, a lot of times you use a Senko, but I like these Fluke sticks because has a little tail on it, looks like a little bass or a little fish feeding off the bottom. And then I just take and make sure that the hook is facing toward the tail. This is a size 1 little Neko hook. And I just kind of get a little bit of that skin, come up underneath where that O-ring is. And that's how I rig it right there. And that nail will keep the nose of it on the bottom. You can just kind of hop it along, and these bass, when they see it, they can't help it. They're going to bite it. This is a great little Neko setup. A lot of times I will use a stick bait like a Senko or a Yum Dinger or something like that, but when I know they're feeding on bait fish, I'm going to use this little Zoom Fluke stick. It's basically a stick worm, same as the others, but just has that tail and it makes it a lot better. You know, once again with this Neko rig, it's pretty much the same as any worm fishing. I always recommend when you're worm fishing, work it slow and keep your rod tip up. Always keep your rod tip up. if you drop your rod tip, you're going to lose feel. You want that rod tip up. Got one hitting it right now. Hadn't quite taken it though. And by keeping that rod tip higher, you can feel everything. Maybe some little rocks on the bottom, or a bass pecking away at it, not quite taking it. And there he is right there. So you just want to work the bait really slow. Worm fishing is slow fishing. I think the biggest mistake people make with worm fishing is just work it too fast. Keep it slow. Let him get a hold of it. You notice my hook set was really easy. I didn't do anything crazy. I just started reeling and lifted my rod tip, and he's hooked. And he's a chunky one too. What a nice bass. It's a nice spotted bass out here at this lake. Nice little keeper. You know, a lot of guys fish tournaments out here, and they look for fish like this, good 1.5 pounds, 1.75 pounds, and then they try to catch a bigger one. They call it a kicker, and then go in and best of 5 fish, and then go in with enough weight to maybe get some money or even win the tournament. So that's a nice bass on worm fishing. Once again, work it slow. Best way to work a worm. There you go. Sometimes, if you notice what I did there, was I dropped this Neko rig down just like a vertical drop shot. And I just let it fall, and he took it, spitting out bait fish. There's 2 or 3 bait fish he's already spit out of his mouth. So I don't know if you see my graph, but there's a ton of bait fish. These are just really healthy spotted bass. They're not huge, but they fight like heck. That's why I love spotted bass. They fight so much. You know, you don't have to catch a huge spotted bass to get a big fight. They are little fighting machines. I don't know if you've ever heard of a technique called a Demiki rig. It's not one I've used a whole lot, but this very much can be used like a Demiki rig, where you can drop it straight down to the bass vertically, bounce this thing around, and as you saw from that last fish, dropped it right down to him, and there he was. Yeah, let's see if they'll do it again. Generally with these spotted bass, where there's one, there's a whole bunch more. Seems like the bigger school moved through. When you know you're on a little, I call it a bait highway, where the bait just run through these areas like crazy. There's a bunch of little surfacing, little bitty baits surfacing right behind the camera there. Now let's chase these bait around. Right now it's fairly clear as far as the graph, but they'll be back. There he is. Once I saw him in the graph under there again, I just started bouncing this thing off the bottom. Just vertical. Vertical Neko rigging. A nice chunky bass today. And they're spitting a lot of bait out. That's a nice one right there. Nice chunk. Oh yeah. This one here's got a really fat belly. Might actually go close to 1.75 pounds, even though he's short. Doggone, I love these spotted bass. Hey everybody, I had a great day fishing today. I caught a lot of fish. I started out with that little swim bait, little missile swim bait. I'll have it in the link for you. Got a lot of hits on it, but they were really hitting the tail a lot, so I wasn't getting very good hook sets. I went to the jig, just started dragging the jig. These bass out here feed on crawdads, so they were hitting the jig really good. And then I went ahead and put that Zoom Fluke stick on, and I Neko rigged it. Caught a lot of bass, both casting it as well as vertical. So it worked out really good. I had a great day out here fishing. I hope these videos help. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see, please subscribe. I appreciate it. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.